Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and a very happy Poila Boishak to all of you. We have gathered today to celebrate the launch of a book that takes an important step in bridging the gap between business management and techniques like AI and deep learning. Recognizing the significance of this attempt, we have managed to bring together some of the most respected practitioners in the domain of analytics and data science for a discussion on the relevance and necessity of a work like deep learning for business managers in today's world. I'm your host, Charanpreet Singh. I happen to have co founded Praxis Business School, an institute that works at the confluence of technology and management and believes that every business manager needs to be armed with the latest techniques and technologies for successful decision making. With me, we have a great group of people, and I will introduce them to you. I will start with Dr. Prithwis Mukerjee, the author of this wonderful book. Dr. Mukerjee is the director of Praxis Business School. He has spent nearly 2 decades in the Indian IT, software, and management consultancy business and has worked in Tata Steel, Tata IBM, PricewaterhouseCoopers, where he was a partner, and IBM, where he was the head of the Kolkata Delivery Center. He has been a tenured professor at VG Som and is listed as one of the 10 prominent analytics academicians in the country. Pritish loves to write. He has authored textbooks on business information systems, Python for beginners, and now deep learning for business managers. His first fictional work was The Road to Singularity, and he has followed it up with two science fiction novels, Chronotantro and Chronoyantro. Forgive me, Pritish, if I missed anything. Uh, Pritish is an engineering graduate from IIT Kharagpur and did his master's and PhD in management science from the University of Texas at Dallas, the USA. And Pritish, welcome to the event, and we would love to hear you talk about the book that you have written. Uh, Next, we have Mr. Vyom Upadhyay. Vyom leads the data science and analytics group at ICICI Bank. He manages a team of analysts working across banking products, channels, and functions, and has driven the adoption of big data tools and AI ML based use cases across various businesses and functions of the bank. Before joining ICICI Bank, Vyom has developed and delivered risk management and CRM solutions to various banks across Asia Pacific, Middle East, and Europe. Vyom holds an MBA from IIM Calcutta and a BTech from IIT Bombay. He has been a visiting faculty at Praxis, delivering lectures on financial analytics. Our next panelist, Mr. Sudipta Ghosh, is partner and data and analytics leader responsible for defining the product stroke solution strategy, go-to-market initiatives, and incubating differential solutions at PwC India, and has 22 years of consulting experience in the field of data and analytics. Sudipto has been instrumental in setting up the analytics practice at PwC and was responsible for building the corporate performance management competency and the advanced analytics propositions using AI and machine learning for the CXO suite. Sudipto is a gold medalist from IIM Calcutta and a silver medalist from IIT Kharagpur. Whenever I read this, it's really impressive because very few people can kind of top at both these very different kinds of institutions. He's a visiting faculty at IIM Kolkata and at VG Som, and is an advisory council member of the postgraduate diploma in business analytics conducted jointly by IIM Calcutta, IIT Kharagpur, and ISI Kolkata. Welcome, Vyom and Sudipto, to this event, and thanks for accepting our invitation. And last but not the least, we have Dr. Angshuman Ghosh. Angshuman is currently the head of data science at Sony Research India. He has set up a best-in-class data science team for Sony, contributing to Sony's success both in India and across the world. Earlier, he has held leadership roles at Disney, Target, Grab, Spice, and Wipro. He's a visiting professor at some of the top IITs, IIMs, and XLRI. He's an official member of and contributor to the prestigious Forbes Technology Council and was awarded the LinkedIn Spotlight 2019 as one of the most inspiring and engaging leaders. So this is the high-powered panel that we have. A lot of experience, a lot of academic quality and pedigree. We thank Dr. Angshuman Ghosh for agreeing to lead and moderate the discussion. I will now hand over the proceedings to Dr. Ghosh.
Thank you very much for the wonderful introduction of all the panelists. So I think we have a lot of experts here, so I will not speak much. I'll probably just guide and moderate the discussion. So first, congratulations to the author for launching this wonderful book called Deep Learning for Business Managers. And before any one of us speak anything about it or related topics, I would request Professor Prithwis Mukerjee to talk about this book, why he launched it at this time, and what is the vision he has for this book. So over to you, Professor Prithwis.
Thank you, ZP, and thanks to Dr. Ghosh for anchoring this. I'd like to give a special thanks to Mr. Vyom Upadhyay for a very strange reason. About a year and a half back, Vyom had asked me to conduct a session on AI for his people in Mumbai. And I thought that this would be a simple matter because, we teach AI and neural networks in our data science program in Praxis. So it would be a cakewalk. I'll just go and talk about it. I mean, whatever I teach here, I'll go and teach. And then I realized what a trap I had fallen into, because the stuff that we teach in Praxis is meant for full-time students. It's very deep, very complex. And if I have to give all that to professional managers, I mean, they'll lose interest. I mean, it was just too messy. So I suddenly realized that, I didn't have stuff to talk about. I mean, so that was problem number one. Problem number two was, you see, I'm a very hands-on person and I like to do things by coding. And in Praxis, of course, we do a lot of coding with TensorFlow, Keras, Python, the whole works. And I realized that for a professional manager to do this on his laptop is too much of a complexity. And as a result, the course which I delivered, it was rather, fluffy and superficial with some slides and this and that. And somehow I managed to, come back without being lynched in ICICI Bank. But I came back with the resolve that I'll do something better. And so I decided to, go back to basics and redesign the whole thing to give it a flavor from the side of a professional manager who is not a full-time student and who has focused on management and not purely on data science. So with that, I started redesigning this whole thing. And it's a very tight walk between, the complexity of the subject. It is a complex subject, and yet to make it, easily understandable to a large group of people, I realized is not easy and cannot be done overnight. The first design decision was that it cannot be a slide deck which people can watch or flip through. It has to be a textbook which people must read. The next problem is, in today's world, people don't like to read big fat books. So my design decision was it has to be a small book. So I went to an A5 book, small, which can be held in your hand, and I restricted myself to 100 pages, not more than 100 pages, which I thought would be something that a reasonably intelligent man can read in about a week at most, and possibly in over a weekend if he really puts his mind to it. So a 100-page book, small book, without losing out on the specifics. Next thing was the platform. I mean, we had to bring in Python. We had to bring in, all the Python libraries. We had to bring in Keras. We had to bring in TensorFlow, because without all that, it becomes trivial. It becomes like a fluffy, a hawabaji. So then I thought that how can a professional manager do all this on his laptop? And I said that my design point is it has to work through a browser and nothing but a browser. Fortunately, the Google Colab platform allows me to do this. It is a full-fledged professional data science platform, but it works only in a browser. So I just latched onto it and decided that I'll design my entire thing around these on the Google Colab so that people can actually practice what I am telling them without having to install a huge amount of software on their laptops. With these two things in mind, the third decision point was that there's a lot of theory, RNN, CNN, GAN, and all that, which gets a little boring. So I identified 5 very interesting and practical problems, and I said, let's solve these problems. And along the way, whatever theory is required, I will add into it. So to solve this problem, whatever theory is required, whatever software is required, I'll add on to it. And that is how this book came about. It's a 100-page book, which can be finished possibly in about a week maximum. And the people who are reading it do not have to install anything on their machine. They can get a full-fledged working demo software of all the 5 applications going in their machines. And we have included the code for that, not in the book, but as collab notebooks, which you can click and use without installing anything. So with these design points and decision points, we have decided to make this book. And finally, this book is now a part not of our data science program, which has, of course, a far more complicated and a bigger subject, but for our MBA students, business managers who will be working in different areas of business tomorrow. So I think for them, this book and will be a very good thing as a starting point, and also for professional managers today who want to, who have this feeling of missing out on the action. They can quickly get back to it by investing about a maximum 1 week of effort into this book. That's all I had to say. And I'd like to thank all the panelists for agreeing to join me in this panel and talk about this book. Thank you very much.
So thank you, Professor Prithwis. That's very interesting because we work in the industry, and some of the challenges and problems that you mentioned, we probably face in a day-to-day basis. Being data science professionals, we understand the code programming and many of these models pretty well. But when we try to explain to some of the business people or other non-technical stakeholders, we find it very difficult to explain their importance and why they should also use it. So I would first request probably Sudipta to talk us a little bit first about his experience of adaptation of AI ML in different companies or industry that he has worked in, and what are the key challenges that you faced, especially when you wanted to explain some of this to your business stakeholders. Over to you, Sudipta.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ghosh, and absolutely a pleasure and a privilege to be part of this August gathering. And I must give my compliments to what we fondly call as Prithwis Da. He has always been my elder and a senior. I have read this book cover to cover, as he said, over a weekend, and I have thoroughly enjoyed it. Now, coming back to your question, Dr. Ghosh, I would like to mention 2 things. One is that we do a lot of research in terms of trying to understand what are the challenges which our clients, customers face. And year after year, when we do this surveys, one thing which comes up very, very consistently, and that is about the lack of skills in terms of driving some of the analytics initiatives in organizations. And by the way, this feedback comes right from the very top. So we do a CEO survey, and in every CEO survey, we find that the overwhelming majority of the senior management and the CEOs do share that they don't have the right skills, and there is a shortage of skills. And this is mostly apparent in the emerging technologies space, and artificial intelligence is definitely one of them, which is very, very critical for many organizations. So that is one trend which is very clearly there. The second trend which we see year after year is that there is a difference between, or there is a divide between the hype and the reality in terms of what people think they can do with an AI and what they actually end up doing and end up using over a period of time. So whilst there is a good amount of interest in the beginning when organizations are dabbling or they are probably building solutions. But what we have seen, at least from the research we have done, is that whilst the number of pilots and prototypes keep on getting added, the ability to scale those prototypes at an enterprise-wide level, there is always a challenge or a question mark. And that comes squarely to the point which you raised, Dr. Ghosh, is about the adoption of how these solutions which have been built, whether they are understood and they are adopted and they are used by the rest of the organization. Now, if I try to put two and two together, what I clearly see is that on one hand, there is a lot of fluffy knowledge which is all there in our head because we read a lot of newspaper articles and other articles, and we create a concept of what is AI and what is machine learning and what is deep learning, without really going too much into the details, either because we do not have time as practicing managers and professionals, or we really don't want to get too much into the detail, or if we try and open a book, it is a big fat book and we can't really understand much. So that is one challenge which is there, is that for somebody who wants to really understand the subject, how easily that person can understand. The second part of it is that AI is a very complex subject, and you have to understand what that model is doing. So for example, if I'm using a model to predict something or to classify something or to understand and sense something, I at least need to know, at least at a very high level, what is it that the particular algorithm is doing. Now that requires a little bit of a hands-on knowledge and some understanding of what is there behind the scenes, and that is something which many professionals do not fully grasp. So there is always a divide between a developer and a manager. A developer will understand a lot about the code. A manager will probably be a little, disconnected from there, and then lies the gap between somebody who understands the business priorities and is also able to see how this can be translated into a piece of code which can be scaled, which can be used at an organization level. This is where, at least from my perspective, I can sense there is a big gap, and this gap is actually widening simply because there is so much of hype about it. People do write a lot of stuff which they have done, but if you scratch the surface, you will find that there is a challenge in terms of the depth of the understanding of this subject. So I would say that there is a lot of scope of improvement in terms of improving our knowledge, and also by as a corollary, if we improve our knowledge and understanding, how do we actually use these tools to make it more widespread in our organization, and if we don't, then we would actually miss out on the opportunity which currently is there with all of us, and we'll not be able to reap the benefits of whatever tools we have at our disposal. So I'll take a pause. Hope that answered your question, Dr. Ghosh.
Thank you very much, Sudipta. Enlightening, and tells us exactly why a simple short book which can explain some of these concepts in an easy manner to the business stakeholders are very much needed. So I would just like to probably add one point, then we'll go over to Vyom, that I think data science or AI has its own language, right? For example, here we are talking about, we are all talking English, right? And we all have learned English over a period of time, probably 20, 30, 40 years. And now when somebody speaks English, it is very intuitive. You don't have to think and translate probably every word and try to understand what the person is speaking, because you have learned the language over so many years. And I personally feel that data science and AI has its own kind of language, right? So when among ourselves, if we talk about something like an RNN, we all understand, oh, this is something, recurrent neural network used for maybe text processing or some such thing. But to a layman, if you say that thing, they probably don't understand. It is just, RNN to that person. And since, as Sudipta rightly mentioned, there are a lot of material available, right? Now, question is their credibility and whether they're actually telling you the exact thing or they're hyping up the thing and talking about some fancy fantasy stories. And people are reading that AI is like some magic. Suddenly somebody with AI or data science comes and all our problems are solved overnight. That doesn't happen, right? And hence, a book like this, which can give some understanding of that language to different people so that they have a common language and then talk to each other can be very helpful. So now I would like to ask Vyom very similar question based on your experience and in your industry, especially maybe financial industry or the companies or engagements you have worked in. What are the things you have seen about AI ML adoption, and what are the key challenges, especially when it comes for the understanding and implementation by the business people? Over to you, Vyom.
Thanks, Dr. Angshuman. But before I say even a single word, I must mention that Prithwis was being extremely modest when he started off with that talk which he gave 2 years back, because the talk was amazing, and it itself gave rise to such a huge number of ideas among the practicing managers in terms of what are the things that could be done. And of course, with this book, the help of this book, it'll certainly take new heights, right? So I think and I heard Sudipta mention about the whole hype versus reality part, and I think that's so much real. But if I just take a step back, uh, I think AI, machine learning, or models, they are a very integral part of the banking experience that anybody goes through today, right? So when we are going on to the digital banking platforms, whatever gets served to us is driven by some backend models. You know, the kind of things that one becomes eligible for example, right? Those are served by backend models. Uh, in the call center or the service side of the story, a lot of things are being automated now. Chatbots are a good example, but it is slowly moving to more and more towards more real time AI. So I think there's a fair bit of movement which has happened there, and I think of course, a lot of tailwinds there. Certainly, a lot of deep skill sets that we have, at least on the services side in the country, that definitely comes in as a tailwind. Our ability to pick up new technology areas and run with that comes and certainly all the listeners on that call are certainly a part of that movement, most of them at least, right? Which is, take a new technology, find use cases of that, and really roll it out at scale. So that is something that we do really well as a country. Uh, and thirdly, of course, the fact that we do have large amounts of data, and we do get a lot of data sets of scale, along with the fact that we are fortunate to be in a country where the digital is really a way of life. So it's not as if one is dealing with data on paper, etc. At any point in time. It is largely digital. You have a very strong India stack, etc. So I think all of these factors put together ensure that at least in my area of work, digitization has gone to a completely different level, and hence the ability to roll out AI based use cases there is also at a in is has been at a particular level, and of course it's growing at a very rapid pace. And hence, Dr. Ghosh, more than challenges, I think it's a very exciting time for professionals, for youngsters who are looking at this as an area, people who want to get their hands dirty, who want to experience what a process of creating some of these algorithms could be. And as Prithwis mentioned, it is as simple as logging onto your Google Colab account and starting off with the help of this book. So I think that's where I see the area at right now, which is I think skills wise we are at a particular pace, but we have to run much faster there. And I think as great users of AI, somewhere we have to now start getting into becoming great developers of AI tools and algorithms as well. So I think that's the next stage of evolution. But I think we are already become great users of AI. So that, in a nutshell, is where I see the stage set for us. I think there are just, since you asked very specific questions around challenges, I would say just two things as challenges. One is identifying the same right tool, right problem to be put against that tool kind of a problem, right? So obviously AI is not the only tool in the toolbox, and hence to be able to identify what's the right tool to be put to solve a particular problem, right? And how does one frame that problem in the first place, right? Is it a prediction problem? Is it a description problem? What is that problem? Is it an optimization problem? So how does one frame the problem, and in the first place becomes an important part, and then of course the tools and techniques follow from there, right? And secondly also, and linked to that is about the right timing of the problem, right? So not just the right tool to identify what is the right time to roll out, let's say, Dr. Ghosh, as you mentioned, a deep learning solution to a particular problem, because some of these problems go through a phasing of it, right? So maybe the earlier stages are managers developing more comfort using more explainable models, where you get more touch and feel of the problem, and then move towards a deep learning algorithm for some of these problems. So I think it's a continuum, but yeah, those are some of the challenges or ongoing debates, questions to be solved. Yeah, I'll pass it back to you.
Thank you very much, Vyom and Sudipta, for sharing your perspective about AI/ML adoption and the challenges. Now, coming back to the main event, which is the book for this. So I have, I'm fortunate to get this copy of the book, and I have gone through some of it, and it is absolutely wonderful. I first mentioned maybe a couple of things I really loved. As Professor Mukerjee mentioned, I would just say three things to be brief. That first, I think it is very short book, as it is less than 100 pages and can be read over 3-4 days to a week. And in a time when everybody is busy and people don't have patience to read a lot of stuff, there, this book makes a lot of sense. A business manager over a trip or over a weekend can go through most of it. Second part I really loved is that the Google Colab notebooks that has been shared, and the link has been also given in the book. So if anyone wants to try out the problem or the code that is given, they can probably go to the link, access the Colab notebooks, and without any complex installation of software can use them. So that is the second thing I really loved about it. The third thing I really loved about it, rather than just talking about the complexity of the model, Professor Mukerjee has taken very interesting and relatable examples. Like instead of talking about how convolution works, he has taken the example of image recognition or probably text prediction for the case of CNN and self-learning cars. So he has taken very relatable and interesting examples, which I think most people without any advanced knowledge of computer science or data science will also be able to relate to, and they'll get interested, and that will probably help them learn these concepts. So I'll again go back to probably Sudipta and ask him now specifically about the book. What is your impression? How do you think it can help the practitioners and the managers? And anything interesting, exciting about this book that you want to share? Over to you, Sudipta.
No, thank you, Dr. Ghosh. And I would call out three things which I found very interesting. The first thing is that the intuitive understanding of what is a neural net and why there is a neural net based approach which is going to give you something very unique. The intuitive examples, the very simple commonsensical understanding of the history of the AI winter, and then again looking at some of the approaches, is something which is very important for a business manager to understand, because whatever we do, we need to understand the philosophy, we need to understand what is the motivation for getting this done. There could be a lot of mathematics, but without getting lost in the sea of maths, can you distill the clear understanding of why we are doing this and how this has come about? So that is the first thing which struck me. And that explanation, that intuitive explanation also is something which came in a very, very simple language, without any jargons or without any complexities of explanation, simple sentences, easy to understand. So that is number one, which completely stood out. The second thing was the focus on not just reading the book, but actually doing it. I think that is something which is very important. So it is not just a bedside reading for you to read and then fall asleep. Actually to entice you to really do it yourself and see that whatever is being written in the book is actually happening in front of you. So it is more like a workbook rather than a reading book. You go through the examples, you try out the piece of code which is written there. You may want to make some modifications also if you want to. So it is very much like not just taking whatever is written, but actually doing. And learning by doing is something which always sticks. You're not going to forget it very easily. And the third thing which kind of comes out very clearly is that this book is not something which is written in an ivory tower by some intellectual. This book really talks about those very, very practical examples where you can relate how this AI model is going to be used in a very, very real life situation. And the examples which has been taken in this book is very, very relatable, very easy to understand, and more importantly, how do you apply those learnings in your organizational context. So for example, we are now in the COVID like situation again, and we want to safeguard our kind of factories or offices and all that, right? And there we want to have some surveillance or a video analytics or a text analytics or even just an image analysis being done. So we can easily see that something which was just a simple recognition can be easily used in the context of today's pandemic like environment, where you are trying to enhance the safety of your workforce, and you are doing it in a fairly automated and accurate way, and making a big difference. So now that making that connection is very easy, because you can kind of read the example, and then you say, oh, by the way, I can use this in this context. So that's the third thing which kind of jumps out, because you are seeing it as something, as a tool which you can use on a day-to-day basis. So I would just call out these three things which actually struck me when I went through the book. Thanks.
So thank you, Sudipta. That's very interesting and meaningful. And I also felt many of those things when I was going through some of those chapters, especially the examples as you mentioned. As professor has picked, they're very relatable. Even someone without a lot of mathematics knowledge can also relate to the example, so they'll get interested. And as you also mentioned that it is not just a book to read and forget, right? He has made it very easy for anyone who wants to use it. So you can learn it by doing it rather than just reading and forgetting, right? Because we read a lot of articles on similar topic, and that's just another 5 minutes of pastime rather than going and finally using it. And this is where probably it will make it very relevant and useful. And that's what I think most of the business managers, they, in my understanding in different companies, I think they always think about this, right? That it is good, fine, lot of hype, but what's in it for me and how it is going to help my business, right? So rather than talking about the mathematical equation of a neural network, or how do you do a optimization function, once you understand, okay, this example, for example, you mentioned about image recognition can be used in the COVID context, or maybe in a medical screening context, or in some other context. Such things people will find probably very useful and relatable. So now I'll go to Vyom. Similar question. What are your first impression about the book, and what are the some things about the book that stood out, and how do you think this book can help business managers to adopt AI in a more effective manner? Over to you, Vyom.
Sure. So, like Sudipta, I've also read this book cover to cover, and it is everything that Prithwis set out to do, which is a very relatable book for practitioners, a very concise book. I think I took about 3 days to complete the book. Uh, for me, one thing that stands out in his book is the range in these 100 pages, right? So Prithwis goes right from the concepts of AI. So you could read up a book on AI at a conceptual level, right? For sure. but he goes from concepts all the way up to the coding layer of AI. And I think I've not seen any other book which covers this kind of a range in such a concise manner, right? Uh, so that's one thing that stands out for me. The other dimension of range that stands out for me and is really the stories around AI, and Sudipta mentioned about the whole context, the history, even the philosophy of AI, where it is heading. Should we be scared or not? Again, I think the range of the book really stood out for me, right? And as Sudipta mentioned, which is, there are sections where, if you don't want to go into the maths of it, you could skip those, and you're still completely on top of the game in terms of understanding what's going on. So I think all in all, my congratulations to Prithwis for coming out with such a wonderful and concise piece of work.
Thank you so much, Vyom, and I think we all relate to what you are saying. And of course, all thanks to Professor Prithwis for coming up with such a wonderful book. So I'll again probably go back to Sudipta. Any specific example that you want to mention from the book or your experience in the context of AI, and how do you see the future is unfolding in terms of AI ML in the industry?
See, one of the things which we always talk about, and there is a lot of discussion about it, is the explainability of AI, and also some risks associated with the behavior of the models after they have been built. And there is a lot of literature which has been written all over there, and sometimes even we have also contributed to that literature as well. So one thing which is very, very important for all of us is to understand how a model works and what does it do. Explainability and interpretability of the model is something very, very critical, because without really understanding what the model is doing, you really cannot use it or adopt it. So when I was going through this entire book, I realized that each and everything which I'm doing is so explainable. I can really understand the code which I'm writing. I can understand the output. I can understand the impact of a change in the data in terms of what it will entail in terms of my output. So as soon as I'm able to intuitively grasp why the model is behaving the way it is behaving, or how the model is working, I think half the job is already done in terms of me trying to explore this in more complex environments, and also convincing others that this is the right solution for you. So I would say that what is needed by the professionals, by the data scientists, by the managers, by everybody, is that they are able to understand what a model does, right? And I think this also goes back to what Vyom was earlier saying, that the starting point is always an explainable model. Maybe later on you can add more sophistication and then kind of hide behind the deep layers of the neural net, and then kind of say that, well, this is what it's doing, but you don't fully understand. But at least the starting point has to be something which you can explain. And I think this book does a great job of at least starting that journey, that you are able to write something which you fully understand, and then you can kind of course, improvise on that. That is one. The second thing, which is always very critical and important, is that the importance of the data. Now, what happens is that sometimes in all this hype, when we say that this AI model can do something and it is almost magical in its nature, what we sometimes do not realize is the fact that how much of the quality and consistency and volume and all of that from a data perspective is going to give you a view that whether your model is going to be accurate or not. So for example, if I take the diabetics example prediction of that, it clearly tells me that if my volume of data can be increased, or if my representation of the data is more accurate, I will probably be able to significantly increase the accuracy of my output. So it kind of gives you some practical examples of what to watch out for in the data, and what to look at, that how can I ensure that I do not have any blind spots, and whatever is the output of the model which I'm getting is truly something which I can apply in an unfamiliar terrain, or I can apply for a future terrain which I need to do in order for me to predict something, or in order for me to understand something which I don't at scale, right? So I think that is something which is very critical, and that's the reason why the doing part of the exercise is so important, because it helps you to appreciate the importance of having the right data set to start with in order to build something which is going to be useful for you. So I think I'll kind of call out these two things. One is the explainability of the model, and second one is the data. And of course, I'm not going to talk so much about the data bias and all that, which is another big topic in the world of AI. That depending on what inherent and unconscious and not known biases are there in the data, how do you translate that into unknowingly sometimes into the output of the model? But I would say that, well, it kind of gives you an appreciation that you need to be careful about what is the data you have with you, which is going to give you the output. So I'll just call out these two things which at least uh, uh, made me realize that this is something very, very important for all of us to understand.
Thank you very much, Sudipta. So coming back to Vyom, Sudipta mentioned I think couple of times about the explainability in models, and definitely probably he has been working with a lot of clients who probably asked him, I assume, about you explain the model or why this is working. So what has been your experience, Vyom, that how important is explainability, and how do you think some of the examples from the book can probably help people understand some of this model in an easy fashion?
Sure. So I think explainability has two dimensions, right? One is explainability of the model itself, right? And but the second one is essentially for an analyst to be able to understand what they're doing, right? So if you're doing an RNN, trying to do a prediction over time, doing an LSTM to do some sort of a time series kind of understand the time series kind of a data, what are you really doing, right? And I think both elements are very, very important. And book, of course, plays very strongly in the second part, in the sense that it allows a lot of these some of the seemingly difficult concepts to become extremely intuitive to the analysts, and hence to be able to then take control of some of these things, right? So you know uh, you know uh, it probably is not it probably is very obvious, but I'll just state it any which ways, right? Which is ultimately to get from an algorithm or a piece of code to a working model is still a lot of hard work, right? So there will be multiple iterations, there will be multiple times when you'll try to figure out, these, if I'm trying to understand a piece of text which was spoken, these are the things which I'm still getting it wrong. These are things where my human agent is able to do it much better. So there will always be a whole lot of iterations, right, before you can come to something workable and working. And during these iterations, now in a deep learning scenario, during these iterations it becomes very interesting, because if you are pitting the model against a human agent, you already are starting to understand how is the model working in its in its internal thought process, in some ways, right? Which is different from a logistic kind of a decision tree kind of an explainability, but it's probably a different kind of explainability, and something which, as practitioners, I think when you're really trying to make a model work, I think those are the kind of questions that you run into, and those are interesting dimensions, is how I'll put it. Obviously, there are very different problems that you'll put in front of a LSTM as against a logistic or a decision tree. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Vyom, for the wonderful comments and the insights. So thank you for the panelists too for all their wonderful insight. I'll probably come back to the author, Professor Prithwis Mukerjee. First of all, sir, heartiest congratulations, and wonderful work you have done with the book, as we could already sense from the discussion that was going on. I'd request Professor Mukerjee if you want to add anything more to the discussion or about the book. So over to you, Professor Mukerjee.
I think enough has been said about the book, and thank you very much to all the panelists and to Dr. Angshuman for kindly taking the time out from their busy schedules to come and talk about a book. which I have spent quite some time writing on. But I'd like to bring out another aspect. You see, artificial intelligence and deep learning is a fantastic subject which can truly transform human society as we move forward. Unfortunately, at the moment, we have some restrictions in terms of technology, in terms of data, and in terms of ethics, which kind of constrain us, which cannot, really move us to the next level, where we consider, artificial intelligence or the silicon species as an equivalent to the carbon species of animals that inhabit this planet. Having said that, it is my firm belief that technology today need not move forward from where we are. It can help us walk backward from where you want to be. So if you think something, you want to make it happen, technology can make it happen. That's what I mean to say, that instead of walking forward from where we are, we can walk backward from where we would want to be. And what is it that we want to be is something that is open to discussion. There are lots of issues, lots of talks, whether we should, and that is where I think I take the liberty of indulging in my other passion of science fiction. When I'm writing a textbook, I am constrained by what is possible. I obviously cannot say things which are not possible. But when I'm moving into the area of science fiction, I can, think about what could be possible and what will be possible. So, it is sometimes good to think of those things because that kind of sets your goalposts, and we should move forward, which is why I write a lot of science fiction novels also. Some of you can figure out yourself. But anyway, so the point is, I keep saying, we are moving into a scenario where we are watching the evolution of a new species on this planet. It is based on silicon, and the way we interact with this is something that is perhaps be very interesting as we move forward. Once again, I'd like to thank all the panelists, Sudipta, Vyom, and Angshu, for thanking you for coming here and talking about this book. Thank you very much. And of course, my good friend Charanpreet for organizing this event and getting this whole show going. Thanks, CP.
Thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome, Prithwis. Yeah. So just one, while we are talking about, all the people who spoke about the book so far uh, are so familiar with the subject that somebody who doesn't know anything about it would think it's something very simple, right? I mean, I think that one of the things about this book, which really is going to make a difference, is that at one end we can use practitioners can read it, as both Vyom, Sudipta as well as Angshuman talked about. But we are introducing it in the second year of business management program that we run. So these are people who would probably have very little or no industry experience, and they're going to go out into the world as finance or marketing or sales or HR or systems specialists. And I think that it's a great initiative to get them thinking about these things before they start their career, and kind of embed these thoughts. That when I go out as a finance professional and I go and join ICICI Bank, even in my small local area that I work in, I need to start thinking that these techniques exist. These are not part of fantasy anymore. I understand what they do. I think it empowers the student, number one, and number two, also gives that person the creative, I think, license to try new things at the job, or at least go and talk to his or her boss, saying that why don't we do this? Because I think that in that sense it's a very novel attempt to get people who are not expecting this actually, who think that okay, even now when you talk to students, I think they're still within those functional areas of business, and they all know that there is AI and there is data science, but it's not. So what we are doing is, with this book, we are not saying it's something different. We are saying it's going to be part of whatever you do in whichever organization as you move forward. And I think the storytelling part of the book, the way it's written, the way it's explained, the kind of examples, I think all of you have spoken about that. I still feel it's going to be a little complex for a lot of people, even to understand that. It brings me to a book called The Brief History of Time, where, Stephen Hawking said that I have made it very simple, but when you start reading it for a layman, it's still a little complex. So I think some parts of it will still be a little complex for people, but I think it's a good exercise for them, whoever goes through this, to wrap their heads around what's happening and what this exciting world is all about. So I think that's another aspect of the book which I'm really looking forward to. I'm excited about when it actually gets into classrooms.
So, Charanpreet sir, should we now do the official launch of the book, or what should we do? You have any suggestion? Or you should take some Q&A. You're on mute, I think.
I think I think Moushumi has to guide me. Do we have questions, Moushumi, that you want the panelists to answer? No, we don't really have any questions. So I think we can take a minute and then maybe we can all hold the book up and do the official launch on this very auspicious day. I think Prithwis and I discussed and we decided this would be a great day to launch the book, and so we can do that. So I think let's do that. Yeah. Right. So here we are. So this is, so let me start since everybody, this is the book, and so this is the way we virtually launch the book nowadays. Yeah. And
Thank you very much.
thank you.
Thanks
Thanks
to all of you.
everybody. Yeah. Thanks
All the best.
everyone for spending your time and coming and adding to this entire discussion. Really grateful. Thanks. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for inviting us. And I'd just like to add that is a wonderful book. So all of you who are watching, don't just sit back. Please go and order the book and get your copy now. And I think within a week, you will, even if you've not understood all the things that we discussed, I'm sure after reading the book, all of this will make sense. Probably you will do some of the coding, test some of the examples, and some of it you can directly use in your business applications. So with that, I think I'll conclude from my side. If Professor Prithwis or other panelists or Charanpreet sir has anything other to mention, they can please go ahead.
We are done.
I think we are good. I think we are good. And thanks so much and enjoy the evening.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Bye bye. Yes.
Thanks.
Bye bye.
Thank you again.